Tonight on The Reno Show, I'll help you find the perfect real estate agent to sell your property. Jen from Interiors Addict is giving us a glimpse into her very own renovation, and Rowan is here to uncover the many uses of treated pine. Mark's back to shed some light on the Sydney property market, and naturopath entrepreneur Tammy Guest is here to give us some tips for keeping up the tempo whilst renovating. Welcome to The Reno Show. Everyone, it's Naomi Findlay here. So at this point of your renovation, let's say you've put in all the upgrades, the kitchen is looking slick and schmick, there's an awesome outdoor entertaining space, and you've even got the home staging stuff all sorted. Your buyers will soon be jumping over one another to take this property off your hands and leave you with a beautiful big profit. Now, how do you make sure that you get the best return that you can possibly get? Who are you putting in charge of making sure that potential buyers see your property in the best light? So you've put in all this effort leading up to this point in time, researching and renovating. The last thing you want to do is make the mistake when it comes to selling. So a wrong move here can literally undo and unravel all the hard work you've put in, costing you thousands in lost profit. So this is all about the marketing. Apple may have invented, in my opinion, the coolest tech products out there. But if they hadn't have put in the effort to show them off, nobody would have had a clue that it even existed. And it wasn't just sticking flyers in university dorms hoping that people would notice. There was a lot of planning involved. So the same goes for your newly renovated property. Just because you've had an amazing property and you've done an amazing renovation, it doesn't mean that it will naturally attract the target buyers. It can only be a magnet to buyers if they're actually presented with it. And only then will your property be the apple of the buyer's eye. Excuse the pun. So, how do you make sure the necessary exposure for your property is achieved? Get a good real estate agent. Now, this may sound like something obvious, right? But a good agent is absolutely essential when it comes to renovating for wealth. And just like with any other profession, there are the good agents and the not so good agents, let's face it. And picking the right one can mean the difference between your property sitting on the market for months on end and your property being snapped up in a couple of days or even a week. And the former will eat into your profits. The latter will have you moving on to your next project with some deep pockets of profit. Now, choosing the right agent is so important if you want to get the highest possible price for your property with the least amount of stress. And once you have found the right one, it'll make things so much easier down the track if you're planning on staying in the renovation game in that area. So a good agent is a lifelong connection. So having a good agent up your sleeve extends beyond just the selling side of things. A great real estate agent can help you find leads for your next renovation project. They can even help you with negotiating side of things when you're buying your next project. So how do you get a hold of this golden agent? Do your research. Just like everything else you have done in your surrounding renovation project, do your research on this one because it is super important. The more you do now, the smoother things will run when you're selling and beyond. Luckily, finding the right agent isn't as difficult as locating a needle in a haystack. That's because when you're selling a property, you tend to go for an agent who is an expert in a particular area. I don't mean the guru in real estate where, they know absolutely everything, but one who, for a particular suburb, absolutely knows it like the back of his or her hand. So you could start by looking up other properties currently selling in the area. Online databases like realestate.com.au and domain.com.au will give you the names and contact details and even the photos of these agents who are working on these properties. Now, your research doesn't end there. Looking at these databases will give you a really good idea of who is available to you, but it doesn't give you much more than that. One of the best ways to narrow down your search is to get physical, and I mean getting physical by showing up at open home inspections. Attend the open home inspections of the agents that you're looking at. And by being present at these inspections, you will not only be able to see the types of houses the particular agents are selling, but you'll also be able to get a really good picture of how they treat both the home and their clients. And that information is priceless. That's the stuff that will help you to decide between going with agent A or agent B. So you don't have to go freshly renovated houses only or ones that have 4 bedrooms like yours. There is a way to gauge an agent showing off any potential property to any potential buyer. So imagine you are David Attenborough, for example. You are observing the agents in their natural habitat. You aren't interfering, you're just making mental notes for yourself. So here are some of the things that you should be noting down as you're observing them in their habitat. Number 1, how does a real estate agent communicate with potential buyers? So when it comes to buying a property, potential buyers like to view homes in their own way. Some like it when the agent gives them a lot of guidance and explains everything, while others like to just be left alone unless they have a question. So you should observe how the agent communicates with different types of people coming through the property. Is he using the same exact approach to all of them, or is he catering and matching to the buyer's needs? Can you see him selling your home in that approach? The second thing to look at is how is the agent acting at the inspection? Communication between people goes way beyond just talking. Body language plays a huge role in making people feel comfortable, and enthusiasm is addictive. So if the agent is bubbly and excited about the property, then that sends one message. Or is he using the same monotone voice and practically throwing flyers at the buyers? First impressions count. And it's not just the first impressions of your house, but also the person that you choose to represent both you and your property. So buyers will feel disinterested if they get a disinterested vibe from the agent. Now, the third thing you need to be looking for is the agent doing follow-up? Did you get a call after you attended the inspection? Follow-ups are a great way to remind buyers about the property they just saw and to give them more information that maybe they didn't get a chance to get during the inspection. Plus, if a buyer is really interested, they will want to know more about the property, and a follow-up call is a fantastic way to fuel that interest. Now, number 4, the fourth thing I want you looking at, was the agent on time? I want you to always keep in mind that potential buyers are busy. They might have plans to attend to, a different property inspection that they need to get to, and they can't afford to wait for an agent who is running late. Punctuality is key in a lot of things in life, and open inspections is definitely one of them. Sure, traffic happens, but if an agent has been in the business for long enough, they'll know that the sale of a property is banking on him being on time. So potential buyers who are kept waiting become frustrated, and they don't end up leading to good buyers or good profits for you. Now, the fifth thing that I want you looking at in regard to your agent, did the agent highlight the best parts of the property? Lastly, you've put in all of this effort in renovating a property. The renovated kitchen and the open plan living are now standout features that you want to show off. They're your strongest selling points for a property, for example, and you want them to be portrayed as such. So look at how the agent speaks about the property, how they highlight this during an open home. Is the agent doing a generic sweep, or is he honing in on the best features? Look at how the property has been shown on paper, and do you think that the photos do the property the best justice? So all of these questions and observations will help you zoom in on your perfect agent. And the agent will be an asset far beyond just selling this project at lightning speed and at record price. Up now we have with us Jen Bishop from Interiors Addict, the country's leading interiors blog. And Jen is with us tonight. Welcome, Jen.
Thank you.
Jen is with us tonight because she recently braved, she'd kind of played on the edges of renovation, I think we might say.
Yep.
But recently she's just completed her first kind of substantial reno.
Yeah.
And there were some really big lessons in it for her. So just a bit of background. Jen's been in the interiors game for quite a while now in the publishing space. So it's not like you're completely unaware of the space or of the products or of any of it, but it was still quite a journey for you.
It was, because if you've never renovated a home yourself, you can write about it all you like and you can talk to other people about their experiences, but actually renovating your own home is really different.
And she everyone says that so politely, doesn't
and
she?
Everyone expects you to know what you're doing because you write about it. But it was a huge learning curve for me.
So what were your three biggest challenges, do you reckon?
Trades, I think.
Okay.
Finding,
in what sense?
Well, just finding the right ones.
Yep.
And I guess what I learned from that is that having good trades is everything.
It is. Treat your tradies well, guys.
Yeah, pretty much. So, for me, that was getting personal recommendations.
Yep.
From people who I trusted, and that was a huge advantage to me, I think, that I had that, yeah.
So trades were one of your biggest challenges. What were the others?
I think we've talked about this before, just being paralysed by indecision and the amount of different things on the market. And I think perhaps for me that's worse because I'm exposed to everything. I'm being sent things every day that are beautiful and you can't have all of them.
And you can't, even if you could have all of them, they're not going to sing the same song.
Absolutely not. Can you imagine if my kitchen had everything I loved?
It would be a cacophony of noise.
Crazy lady kitchen. Yeah.
It would. It'd be like a mad Catwoman kitchen.
It would. I hope that's not what I've got.
No, she doesn't have that. But I guess that's a really good point because some people get so into their renovation, which is amazing, but they research and the market is so flooded with amazing products that sometimes people are paralysed with actually how to put it together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, it was the case of keep going back to what I've always loved because especially with the kitchen, it's a room you have for a long time. It's a very expensive room to do from scratch.
It is.
And for me, it was keep coming back to the things you've always loved for years, which are things like the shaker style cabinetry and quite a classic look and a palette that was quite grey and blue. And I kept coming back to those things thinking, what can I add in that's a bit different but isn't so permanent?
That isn't outside, too far outside.
Yeah, that still works with that and gives a bit of an edge, but is not, you could potentially change if you, in 5 years,
really
didn't like
it.
Yeah, but cabinetry, not so easy.
No. And so that's number 2. What was the third thing that you found really challenging?
I think...
I'm pushing it here.
Yeah, I know. I don't know if this is a challenge so much as something that I learned, and that was that planning is really important.
Vision?
Having a vision and writing that all down, having it somewhere, having an idea of how the reno is going to happen in terms of the order of trades coming in. And I think also at the same time as planning being important, being a little bit flexible to things changing as you go along.
No.
If you stick too closely to your plan, you may get halfway through and think, actually, that was a bad decision, but I don't want to admit it was a bad decision. I'm just going to keep going with it. You need to be like, actually, no, that
need to be able to
feel
cut it
right.
off.
Yeah, let's change that at this stage because I'm really not going to like that next month and
I'm going to hate it in a year.
Yeah.
And you know what? We've had this conversation loads of times before about how amazing spaces aren't created overnight.
No, they're not.
And about the importance of layering your design and sitting with your design and feeling it as you then layer your next parts on top of it.
When you finish your kitchen, that's really the start of it because there'll be so many styling elements and
So
things.
for example, in yours, we've had, so your technical kitchen renovation, it's highly functional. It's been functional for ages.
Yes.
But then it's the plants. Then
Yeah.
it's the window furnishings.
It's the
then,
tray with the, deliberately placed candle and
No.
things like that.
Yes. And they're the layers. They're the layers that
exactly
you need to.
that.
And you know what's really
and
interesting?
the art and things like that.
Yes.
I still
See,
haven't finished.
No, that's an interesting point that Jen just brought up, which is a bit like what we have previously talked about in bathrooms when you said art. So many people go, you don't put art in your kitchen.
Yeah.
You do.
Yeah, you do. Absolutely.
You
Why not?
absolutely do. I like that. Why not? But another amazing thing that you just said, which I loved, which was about going back to what you've always loved.
Yeah.
And so for me, one way people can do that is actually well before you started renovating or you're going to start renovating, or if you're going to start renovating in 5 or 6 years or 2 years or 1 year or 1 month, start putting together like your Pinterest boards and your dream boards.
Yeah.
And start, even if you date stamp them and have different ones for different seasons and reasons, when you go back to actually do your renovation, you will notice a common theme.
Definitely.
And you'll notice, for example, shaker style doors would have always been in every Pinterest board you would have ever have done loving kitchens, right?
Yeah.
And so that gives you an ability to look back over time and really understand what you loved because it was a trend and what you loved because it's truly and innately you.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
All right. So would you do it again?
Would I renovate a house again?
Yes.
Yes. I did really enjoy the experience.
Okay.
It was very stressful at times.
Yep.
I think probably because I hadn't done it before.
Yep.
But
That's
I think the next one can only be easier.
So if you had 3 top tips.
Get good, get recommendations for your trades.
Yes.
From people that you know who've actually used them. I would say start planning as early as possible.
Okay.
And I would say be open to change halfway through.
So
if
be
it's
flexible
possible.
about stuff.
Be flexible, yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that flexibility is not only on your choices, but flexibility on your times and your orders.
Absolutely, because it never ever runs to plan.
Never runs to plan. And that's why flexibility is so, so important.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll be showing you some of Jen's amazing renovations. So keep an eye on our blog, keep an eye on future episodes, and you'll get to see the amazing transformation that Jen did. Thank you for sharing your experience, Jen. It was an amazing one to be on a ride with you, and it's a phenomenal result. So you should be so stoked.
Thank you.
We're here today to discuss all things timber and timber treatments. So timber is widely used in all our renovating and most of our construction around our country, amongst some other things. But our country is pretty harsh and we need to be really conscious about what levels of timber we use in different settings, right, Rowan?
That's right. So depending on the whether it's inside or outside, whether it has exposure to moisture, whether it's in contact with the ground, all these things come into play when it comes to choosing the correct timber to use for your project.
So you often go to a hardware store or a lumber yard, I love that word, lumber yard, or a timber supplier, a timber yard, and you'll see, in ground, above ground, internal, H2, H3, H4, H5, and I think yesterday you taught me there's a H6, right?
There is a H6 as well, yes. It's pretty extreme. We wouldn't use it in renovating unless you're building a boat.
Okay, cool, but it exists.
Yeah, it does exist.
There you go, learn something new every day. So today we've got some timbers here that we're going to go through, Rowan's going to go through with us, which are all different H levels, I guess
H
you'd
levels.
say.
So what does H stand for? Good question, glad you asked. That means hazard level. So that's the hazard treatment. When we're talking hazard with timber, there's some various things. So there's timber classes which talk about the durability of timber. Mm-hmm. There's hazard levels which talk about, basically we're talking about termite treatment, mold, fungal resistance. And then
rot resistance.
And then there's F class, so we're talking, that's a visual grading of the strength of timber, or basically the bendiness of a timber. And then we talk about MGP grading as well, which is machine grade pine, which is a grading technique, but they put it under a machine, and it doesn't just test bendiness, it tests things like elasticity and twistiness and shear strength, all those sorts of things. So it can get very confusing. Don't worry too much about it. Any timber yard will tell you what you need to use for your project pretty much, but today we're going to address hazard classes. So we're just going to talk about timber use in and outside of the home and its how it affects what you choose to build with it. So
Perfect. Should we start with Big Kahuna?
the Big Kahuna, this
Big
one right here,
Kahuna.
you can see on the bottom here, it's got a stamp. It says H4, meaning hazard class 4, which means that it's good for external use and it's okay for contact with moisture, but not direct contact with moisture. So you could use that in the ground if it's surrounded by concrete or something like. Oh, actually, you could use that on the ground, but not in the ground. So it can get direct contact with moisture, but it has to have the ability to dry out.
So pretty much all these different timbers, so a H4 timber comes in different shapes and sizes, obviously. So when you say, just for clarity, when you say it can go in the ground, but it has to be encased by concrete, we practically mean that, so if this was a post for a deck, it could go into the hole, but it has to be fully encased by concrete. So you can't shove it in all the way to the ground and then just pour concrete around it. So that's what you mean, right?
That's right.
Okay,
Yeah. So
perfect.
You want to keep. So that's another good point to bring up. If you're using timber as a post, as a structural post, and you're putting it in ground and you're surrounding it with concrete, you need to surround every part of that post with concrete. That means in the bottom as well. You can't just rest it on the bottom of your hole and then backfill it with concrete, because moisture will come up through the bottom of the post and it will rot it out from the inside. And then before you know it, you'll have subsidence and you have a whole world of problems. So
on your beautiful deck.
on your beautiful deck, yeah.
Hey, the other thing that we were talking about the other day, which many people aren't aware of, is if you had to saw this piece of timber to put it into the hole, or the appropriate size piece of timber to put into the hole, you actually need to apply the same treatment that's on the outside of all of this to the cut end.
You can probably see
you go.
here on the end of this one even as well, or that one you can.
Look at this.
Oh, you probably won't see it as clearly on that, but here you can see this is treated, obviously, and it's got a blue dye in it just to show what the treatment type is. Basically, it's a colour identifier that doesn't affect the treatment at all. So this is the unsawn end, obviously, and at this end you can see where we've cut it, there's no surface treatment there. You can see it's only a surface treatment, so it's just to discourage borers and fungal treatment from the outside, obviously. But if you cut your treated timber, you need to make sure that you treat your cut ends as well, just to ensure that it's protected. Otherwise, you void the warranty on it, basically.
And don't freak out about that. You don't need to send it back to a factory to get treated.
Yep.
You can literally buy the product,
in a little tin, and
topically
just
apply it.
Yep, that's it.
Winning.
After your cuts.
Winning.
Yep, no
all
problems
right.
at all.
Okay, H4, done.
H4 done. Do you want to talk about these ones?
Go for it.
Okay, so this is a H2. I don't know if you can see the stamp there, but it says H2F here. And then it's got a number here, which I believe is actually the, I think that's the mill number, so it might be the plantation that it's come from. But yes, you can see it's treated with, it's LOSP treated, so that's a light organic solvent preservative, which basically just carries the chemicals that are used to discourage borers and termites and things like that. And then they've dyed that blue so that when this is all in a stack, in the timber yard, they go, oh, the blue ones we know are H2s. And then this one here, which is a H3, you can see is green in colour. So same purpose, but then they just go, oh, we know the green ones are H3, so they go straight to that pile.
So usage-wise, where would I use a H2 to a H3? Can you
Well,
help everyone
H2
out?
is, okay, so H2 is internal, some wetting, no leaching, and then H3 is, that could be, you could use that externally, but not
in contact
with the ground. So,
Cool.
yeah.
So you could use a H3 for a bearer or joist on a deck.
You could do, yes,
Okay.
yes. Or if you're building, I don't know, like maybe a pergola or something like that
like
outside.
a pergola roof?
Yeah, a roof or something
the
like that, so
framing?
you know
Yep.
it's going to get some exposure to moisture, then you'd probably be leaning towards a H3.
Cool. And what about this puppy?
Well, that's just MGP 10, so that's the strength grade of that one, and it's untreated. So that one,
Internal
only. Try and avoid contact with moisture if you can. Yeah.
Winning. So there you have it. There's a pile of different ways we specify our timber. One of them is the hazard rating,
Hazard rating.
which pretty much if you're looking to do anything outside of your home, you need to know about.
Yep, that's right. H3 outside generally, and H3 and higher. So it goes from H1 to H6. H3 outside, anything lower inside.
Perfect. Thanks, Ron.
No worries.
Now, never last nor least, let's shift to our home state of New South Wales.
Yep.
So I cannot have this show without talking about Newcastle, my home city. So let's quickly touch on Newcastle before we head to the big humping Sydney.
Yeah, sure. So when it comes to Newcastle, like we're the second biggest city in New South
We
Wales.
are.
And
Don't tell anyone.
It's becoming a city. It's gone from like a regional town to a
It
city.
has.
Used to be a coal port and steel city was all it was known for.
Yep.
It's still the world's biggest exporter of coal as far as the harbour goes.
Yep.
But that was recently traded and a Chinese-backed bank has actually taken a 99-year lease on it. With another capital arm, and they're looking at alternate uses for that port. They've already expanded the cruise ship side of things.
Yes.
They've got cargo coming in and out of there now as well as the coal. But
So even though people are going coals all down and out, Newcastle actually has a pile of other things happening.
Oh, definitely. So, growth drivers we look at. I spoke at Cityscape in Korea, South Korea recently,
Yep.
and they were looking at what areas are emerging.
Yes.
And Newcastle, when you add up all the drivers, we've got a RAF base that's got multi-billion-dollar contracts over
Yes.
many years. We've got a huge health sector. We've got education. They're bringing unis into the city.
Yes.
3,500 students, plus they're expanding, plus Japanese have just bought a building and they're going to convert it to a boutique university.
Yes.
Then you've got great employment, great construction, properties going well, hour to the vineyards. So these are all things that are driving Newcastle, and we've seen extremely good growth in the city, and it's rippling out to, say, Lake Macquarie as well.
Absolutely. And a lot of people are saying that Newcastle has completely followed and bumped off Sydney, and that we're going to dive when Sydney dives.
Yeah, so historically, Newcastle used to follow Sydney because we were just like the little sister. I'm so glad you said sister and not brother. We
Little
could have said it
sister.
we were the little sister. That's because we didn't really have any growth drivers other than what was going on in coal or New South Wales economy.
Yes.
Now it's got its own story.
Okay.
And what we're seeing is people exiting markets like Sydney and Melbourne where they've done really well and they're coming for the lifestyle, the jobs.
Yes.
And we've got 8 beaches within minutes of the city.
Literally.
And I live pretty much 300 metres from the beach, and my office is 400 metres away, and ... And we've got restaurants and everything right near us. Newcastle's one of those places you can have it all, and that's driving growth.
Okay, we're totally never putting this to air because I don't want everyone to know that Newcastle is where we have it all.
Oh yeah, the best kept secret.
That's right. Not anymore. Not anymore.
Yeah.
And so what about Sydney now?
Yeah, so Sydney is still undersupplied. So if you talk to someone like Dr. Andrew Wilson or any of the sort of economists
Yes.
out there, Tim Lawless from RP Data, they look at Sydney and they say, okay, yeah, it's coming off the boil because, again, the Asian influence on the market was huge. The fact we've had such strong growth for such a long period of time, income versus the cost of living
Yes.
there, and all of these things that go with it. But there's no doubt it's still undersupplied. It's still growing rapidly. It's a 4 to 5 million person population. And people don't want to commute 1.5, 2 hours to get into Sydney, so they want to live in there. If
Yes.
you want to live in there and there's more people than there is property, then you're going to have upward price
So
pressure.
we're talking back to the old-fashioned, simple supply and demand.
Supply and demand. And I suppose, I've kind of indicated that on all the markets we've talked about.
Yes.
If you can find something that's hard to replicate, then you're going to have more demand than you are supply. In Sydney, those suburbs in the city, those Surrey Hill suburbs, the inner west, the Paddingtons,
Yes.
Redfern has come a long way. It's one train station stop from the
Huge
city. And you just think, what do people want? They want to be amongst where they're working. They want bars, they want cafes, they want lifestyle.
Do you know one thing I'm even noticing though? Even out as far as the Hornsby Rim, the Hornsby Heights,
Yeah.
what used to be not even classed as Sydney before, now that's actually, it's 40 minutes on a train from the city compared to some of the suburbs that are, say, at the foothills of the Blue Mountains. That's actually considered to be part of not the inner city, obviously, but the very acceptable rim to live in.
Oh,
and
totally.
prices there are booming still as well.
Well, as far as Hornsby and those areas, but also if you look at what they call Greater Western Sydney now,
Yes.
that growth corridor with the WestConnex that's going on. So you're thinking around that Parramatta area, Blacktown, out through to Penrith. They were areas that used to be so far flung. You
Yes.
look at, say, Parramatta, for example, they're calling that the new Sydney. So, if you look...
That's interesting.
It's interesting. So you look at the type of buildings that are going up, you look at, of the top top, I think, 500 companies in Australia. There's something like 130 of them that have got head office or
In
presence
Parramatta.
in around Parramatta. So
That's actually a big
significant.
stat. That is significant, isn't it?
Yeah, very diverse culturally as well. Lots of population there of people that have moved over, immigrated, or
So pretty much what you're saying to me with Sydney. So we've got this big bubble and this big balloon, and everyone's waiting for someone to come out of Pandora's box and pop it. So what you're suggesting to me is if you're in an area with, again, piles of drivers, you can't be replicated, which realistically, anywhere close into the city, it's pretty hard to replicate what we have in Sydney.
Yeah, transport and being near that transport and being short on land.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so, in that sense, that even if someone came across with a big pin, it's not going to deflate down to a little shriveled up balloon.
Well, in all the changes in the markets we've seen, like if you go back 4, 5, 6 cycles, most of those cycles have been between 6 and 10 year cycles.
Yes.
If you look at Sydney's, it's a bit of a sawtooth sometimes where it goes up steeper, pulls back quite steep. But, even the GFC, you had areas like Double Bay and Vaucluse that were really prestigious areas, a lot of money tied up in overseas markets and tied to the share market. Those properties softened by like 20% at the elite end of the market.
Okay.
But if you have a look at the ones that were, say, $1 million in Vaucluse and Double Bay and places like that, they didn't come back 20%. They came back like 5 and 6 and 7, and they recovered like a year and a half later.
Absolutely.
So,
Which is actually really quick.
Yeah, definitely.
In the property market, recovering from a drawdown in the market after a year, that's amazing.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where, if you're looking at it for the longer term, it have to be something really macro and really across the whole country to disrupt the drivers that somewhere like Sydney's got with population and all the other things we've talked about.
I like it. So guys, there is a Pandora's box and we just peeked inside it today. We certainly didn't open it up. We peeked inside Pandora's box on what's happening in our real estate markets across the country. So thank you, Mark, again. I love the insights. I think there's so much everyone can take from this, and we'll see you next time that you're on the couch.
Look forward to it.
Here today to talk to us about some of the hidden things on our renovation sites that can greatly affect our health is Tammy Guest from tammyguest.com. Welcome, Tammy.
Hi, Naomi. Nice to be here.
Oh, it's very exciting to have you. So Tammy and I have just been having a little chat about some of the different elements that we can actually be exposing our bodies to on a renovation site that can make a huge impact into our day-to-day living. And so we're not talking about big known contaminants like asbestos or lead in the paint. We all know that they need to be identified, treated well, dealt with well by professionals and by law. So that's not what we're talking about. We're actually talking about some pretty mainstream elements that are on pretty much every single renovation site in some capacity and the impact they can have. So of all these things that we come in contact with, Tammy, what's the number one thing that you see and you notice impacts on us as renovators?
The biggest, most hidden thing that everyone just kind of palms off is actually mold. So mold has so many different triggers in your body. Some of the big things are behavioral changes, like you can't focus or concentrate. Maybe you get a bit vague in the afternoons. It also can cause atopy, which is like an itchy kind of feeling under your skin, and sometimes a dash of anxiety. Now, I know a whole bunch of Reno peeps are experiencing all these on a daily basis, and it might not just come from the mold. But if you've noticed, even a piece of mold or a mold spot that's bigger than a full stop has actually got more than 40,000 mold spores on it, and they're affecting you.
That's a lot of spores.
Yeah.
So when we walk into one of those bathrooms that need renovating and the entire ceiling is grey. It's grey.
It's growing.
I say grey, she says growing. I'm like, well, it's grey. She's like, no, it's alive and moving and growing. That's a lot of mold.
It is a lot of mold, and that isn't just on the ceiling, it's also in the air, and then it attaches to your skin. Your body in that moment is going, get me out of here. And you're on the inside there trying to make a decision about, what shall we do with
and
the
how much should we
tiles,
spend,
and how much should we spend, and why isn't that tradie here to talk to about it? And in that moment, the rest of your body is just anxious and wanting to get out of there. So you can see, even in the decision-making process, some of these hidden things are actually causing you stress, undue stress, health stress.
So even when I haven't disturbed the ceiling, even when I haven't tried to clean the mold off, even when I haven't ripped the ceiling down and exposed myself to all of the stuff that's inside the ceiling, I'm actually still bringing it in.
Yes.
Right. Okay, so obvious things for me as a renovator that I know I can do about that is actually wear my PPE.
Absolutely. PPE is the most basic and most essential.
And this is one of my actual pet peeves, when people don't wear PPE until they, number one, hurt themselves, or unless they know there's a known contaminant in there, like one of the big guns, which you discussed earlier. But my argument is that you don't always know what's behind a wall. You don't always know what's under the paint. And in this case, you don't always know what's in the air anyway.
Yeah, and these things are hidden. There's a reason we're describing them as hidden, is because to your plain sight, you can't necessarily see them, but your body can sense them and it has a reaction already to them.
All right. So what's the second one then? What's the second biggest thing?
Other than PPE though, we've got to be making sure that you're hydrated. The only way that your body can get rid of the little reaction that it has to these things is actually to flush it out.
Literally.
Yeah.
So if I wear my PPE and I'm continually hydrated on site, what about wearing not just PPE as in for when we inhale it? You mentioned about the mold attaching to our skin. So obviously long sleeves are a really great idea when you're renovating, rather than the little tank tops and trucky singlets that you see people getting around in.
Yeah, totally. And not going home and then just flopping on the couch. It's actually going home and going and making sure that you don't have anything on you by going and having a shower and getting it off. Don't just leave it there. Your body
Simple
then
things.
starts to have a reaction, yeah.
And it also then transfers it.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So number 2, what's the second biggest thing that you think we need to fight from a hidden perspective on a site?
Well, dust. I mean, who hasn't gone to
everywhere.
a site that hasn't got dust? Yeah. So dust is a really big one, and about 40% of the population are going to have an immediate reaction to dust. So you might see it from the itchy eyes to the sneezing to all that kind of stuff. And you might think that that's a transitory thing, and it is, but the thing about it is, under the surface of your skin, you are still having these immune-like reactions. And that takes energy for your body to do that. It takes time for it to do that. And it impacts the way that you're making decisions and showing up.
So what can I do there? Same things, cover up, PPE, hydrate, and make sure I wash down before I go home and transmit it or transport it or activate it into my existing home.
Absolutely.
So from a renovator's perspective then, if you're actually renovating your own home at home, if you're actually about to undertake your kitchen renovation or your bathroom renovation, or, you're about to sand down your dining space, there are so many amazing products available on the market at the moment to help you contain that. There are like phenomenal seals that you can put around your doors so they're completely covered. And there are also ones that are a bit like, I guess, remember the old-fashioned, when we were young, the old-fashioned cool room doors, that they're actually big, heavy plastic doors that you can tape up around your existing door so you can still push through it, but it closes behind you, minimizing the impact of the renovation. So you're effectively doing a bit of containment if you're doing it at your own house.
Yeah, so containment's the physical stuff on the outside. PPE is your personal containment. And then on the inside, if you're making sure that you've got water on board, and the other thing is antioxidants. Now, antioxidants are found in all sorts of plants. There's a reason why they have this amazing ability to create oxygen for us. They're antioxidants. So what they do is make sure that any free radical damage that you have from these hidden things is actually swept up and contained on the inside. So antioxidants, you can buy them in a bottle. We've talked about
Good job. I'm glad we can buy them in a bottle.
Easy way. Yes. And then other antioxidants, you could be having a green smoothie. So they don't taste as bad as you think they do.
And what about like easy fruit to eat? Like, can I eat blueberries or strawberries? Is that something that I can easily pick up?
Absolutely.
And throw in.
Brightest colours has the most antioxidant activity. Yeah.
That doesn't include red frogs, apparently.
No red frogs. That would just be the strawberries, real strawberries, not strawberry milk, strawberry frogs, strawberry or actual strawberries.
So I think what I'm taking from this is containment all round. That on our reno sites, whether we can see it or not, there's a pile of contaminants and irritants that won't just affect us from a health perspective. It will actually affect the way we interact with people and how much we enjoy the experience. So we can contain it in the environment, contain it on our body, and contain it inside our body.
Yeah.
Good sum up?
Awesome.
Thanks so much, Tammy.
I'll see you later.
Next time on The Reno Show, I'll be revealing the 3 things to consider when styling your home for sale. Denise is back to help you achieve wealth and manifest your dream project. And we've got all the highlights of our first real renovation story. And how high should your ceilings be? Well, Rowan is giving us his top tips to making sure your ceiling heights are legal. Remember to like and subscribe to our channel to receive weekly renovation and lifestyle inspiration. If you have a question about today's show, leave a comment below and we'll be sure to get straight back to you.